Work shouldn't feel like a drag, and you shouldn't have to sacrifice your soul for a job you love. Determined to rethink the future of work, she's out of her depth on purpose. With fresh ideas, interviews, and stories from her life on the road, meet Europe's newest digital nomad, Blair Palmer.
Hello and welcome to episode 82 of A Brilliant Gamble. I hope you are really well. We are still in England. We've decided to stay for a few extra days. We have a family member who's not very well, and we've just delayed our plans to head over to Italy just by a few days so we can be here and just look after them a bit and make sure they're settled before we head off for another month. This is one of the things that I will definitely record a show about in future. You know, you think you have your plans and you think you have everyone on board, you may have everyone on board, but at some point during that journey, whether it's a physical journey, as in our case, or whether it's a journey of change in any other situation, sometimes you think, actually, I have to make some changes to our plans, not because I want to change them, but because other people in our family, in our community, whatever it might be, need us to change our plans. And there's a really interesting balance there between compromising on what is important to you and being true to yourself and making change in your life, and also staying true to other aspects of your authenticity, which might include supporting and comforting and looking after relatives when they're not well. So we'll definitely come back to this. How do you get that balance right? I can't tell you yet. I'm right in the middle of it and I'm not sure that I am getting the balance right. So I need to reflect on it a bit more, but it's certainly something very real, a very real challenge as you're thinking about, I want to do something for me, but I also want to make sure that that is blended with what else is important to me. In other words, my family, my friends, my community. Anyway, that's what's happening here, but I am so excited about today's interviewee. Susan Gafsen is co-founder of Pep Lekker, a vegan food startup specializing in soups and now seeds. But this is relatively new for her. For most of her life, Susan lived in a way that most of us recognize. She excelled at school. She became a lawyer, she balanced a tough career with having kids, and certainly from the outside it would have looked like she had it all. But when Susan's son started having mental health problems, she realized she needed to stop and think about her life. In this interview, Susan tells her story. Parts of it will be familiar to you, I'm sure. And it's great to hear how one woman dealt with coming to a major crossroads in her life and what's happened since she made the bold decision to start her own business with her sister-in-law. I hope you'll enjoy it, whether starting your own business is on the cards for you or not. I think huge elements of this story will resonate with you, and I'm sure that you will be inspired to take a bold action of your own after you've listened to Susan. Let's go over to the show. Susan, so great to have you on the show. How are you?
Yes, I'm very good, and thanks for having me.
I know we're in France as I record this, but you are in the sweltering heat, believe it or not, listeners who aren't from the UK, of the UK. How are you guys coping over there?
Well, it's extraordinary because it is sweltering and we're all very hot because our homes don't really cater for this heat. And my dog's exhausted and also extremely hot.
It's amazing. Of course, this would be the summer that I choose not to be in the UK, when the UK is having glorious weather and everyone's wandering around in flip-flops. But listen, I obviously didn't get you on the show to talk to you about the weather. You have this, I suppose it's not unusual in the sense that a lot of people now are deciding at a certain point in their life to take a different direction in their professional lives and to completely rethink what they do for work and how they earn money and all of that. But your story is so interesting and in a way so accessible that I really wanted to talk to you about how this all came about. So maybe we can backtrack right to the beginning, and you can paint a picture perhaps of your childhood and what kind of family you grew up in and what the values were around education and around work that you grew up with.
Okay. So I grew up in a traditional Jewish household, and my father was a strong believer in you had to work hard at school. And he always wanted two boys, but unfortunately he had two girls. But we still went to very strict academic private schools, and it was all about working hard, rather than about who we are. And I was, and my sister, who was 4 years older, didn't really buy into that. So she did all the bad things. So I did all the very good things. So I always wanted to please my father, which I did by working hard, getting very good grades. And so my father decided that I was going to be a lawyer, and I should go to the top firms. And so I didn't really think about it, which sounds now very strange, but they were really different times. And I just thought, yes, I will go to one of the top firms. And I didn't really think about how that all fitted in with my traditional Jewish background, which was all about women being at home, raising children. So those two aspects didn't really reconcile, but I still carried on.
I mean, I think that's quite typical in a lot of ways. It certainly reflects a lot the lifestyle, the upbringing that I had. I mean, I'm also from a Jewish family, but I think that's a lot of people I knew had this. They had this. I mean, growing up in the 80s with this expectation that you would, as a woman, you could have it all. So you could have the career, and that you should have the career, and you should aim high for yourself. And at the same time, you'll also be a mum, and you'll do all the things that your mum did, even though she didn't necessarily have the high-flying career. And I think that there wasn't much of a precedent, was there? So that we couldn't possibly have known, really, that it was going to be very hard to do both of those things equally well.
Yes. I think that's right, because I remember people. It was all very much Margaret Thatcher, and she portrayed the fact that you could have everything. And so I started work really thinking that I could, and didn't really know otherwise. So yes, I think that's really true.
So what happened? You got through your education, did really well. You went and joined one of the big law firms and moved your way up there. And of course, at the same time, you had family. So how did you cope with both?
Well, I didn't really. So I was working really hard, and I also married my husband, who also did the same thing. So he was also working very, very hard. And we didn't think about children or how that would fit in. And then the early 90s happened, and the recession hit. So I was working on corporate finance transactions, and that all started to really dry up. And then I thought, well, how about having children? So it wasn't really until the work changed that I actually had time to sit back and to think about having children. And then as soon as we thought about having children, again, it was automatically decided that it would be me that would take a back seat with my career. And I don't remember having any discussion with my husband. And so I then had to decide about what I was going to do. And Then, because my training was corporate finance, and it was very specialized, the only way that I could combine bringing up children without working 24/7 was to work part-time and to give up real frontline career work.
I know a lot of people will be listening to this and thinking, well, this is just the way it was, and maybe even it's the way it is. And it sounds like at no point really did you question, is this really what I want? It wasn't these weren't on purpose choices, even though,
No.
you know, to anyone looking on, what a great lifestyle. I mean, you had a great career, and then you got married and you had kids and you were able to work part-time. I mean, a lot of this sounds ideal, but it also sounds like none of it was quite chosen by you.
That's right. So, I mean, it was all, so then work became very much somewhere I went to. I can't really explain. I suppose work went from being fun to being something that I did to kind of put our kids through school and give them clothes. And so work before had been fun, and the work that I did became tedious, and I just accepted that life was all about compromise. So I felt that I had to do work that was boring and tedious, but that was all about compromise.
Yeah. At what point did you start to think, I don't want to make these compromises, or maybe I don't need to anymore?
Oh, that's really, really hard, because I think to be honest, I carried on because you can be very busy with, you know, bringing up kids, working. I then actually worked harder, so I worked 4 days rather than 3, and I did keep myself very busy with all sorts of things, but I didn't really stop to think about my career. And then my eldest son had mental health difficulties, and we had real trauma, and that made me stop and think, and I had to do really think about meditation, about mindfulness, and I had to stop just doing. And I really had to think about me, what I wanted. And I realized that I had been slightly codependent, and I'd been relying on my kids for so much because I wasn't really satisfied myself. So I suppose that was the real turning point for me. And so when my son became better, I thought, right, now I am going to make changes.
I mean, it's quite a wake up, isn't it? When something happens in the family and you think, wow, we look at the impact of how we're living on the kids, on my ability to cope. I mean, most of us are fine with the compromises that we've made, and we've got used to them. They've happened quite slowly. And sometimes it seems to take something quite dramatic. It's a shame that it does, but it seems to take something quite dramatic for us to think, oh my gosh, this is not actually sustainable. And look how easily I get unstabilized by something that's happening in our lives.
Yes. I mean, I realized that actually making compromises, I hadn't allowed myself to be me, and I was vicariously making myself happy through my children, which wasn't really healthy for them.
Yeah. So what, at that point, you've discovered mindfulness and meditation, you've realized that you've got to put yourself much more at the heart of your decisions. What happened then?
I'd been working at this big city firm, and I had been I'd built up this marketing and business development group, and that had all gone really well. But then the firm decided that they wanted to bring on people with expertise in marketing, and so it was natural that I decided, and the firm really decided together, that now was the time that I should move on and do something completely different.
And that's when you decided to study business.
Yeah. And so, and then because I'd been in the same firm for 20 years, I'd lost all my self-confidence. So working in a very big firm with really bright people and not having a central core role really saps away your own personal confidence. So I realized that I really needed to learn skills, but also to build up my own self-confidence.
So here you were in this environment, not feeling great, and you decided I need to get some skills. And what was it about studying business that you thought this is actually the right thing for me? Because at that point you didn't have a business idea, did you?
No, I didn't. I thought business because, again, the law firm training is very specific. And so, there's lots of areas that you don't see because that's done by, bankers, accountants. So you don't you're kind of seeing things through a very narrow prism. And so there were lots of areas that I felt that I had gaps. And also the course that I chose had personal coaching in. And I'd never had personal coaching before. So I thought this was a really fantastic chance for me to find out who I was.
So you were in your 40s at this point, were you?
No, I left my law firm when I was 50.
Oh.
So I was 50 and I went to business school, and I was the oldest by at least 20 years. And it had all changed. I didn't know how to use laptops. I couldn't do Excel. I was used to having secretaries. So the whole thing was a huge shock to me to start with. Sitting exams again, revising, writing assignments with cross-referencing, which we haven't ever done before, obviously. So the whole thing was a huge change, but at the same time, very exciting.
Was there a moment during that transition and starting the course that you thought, I can't do it? Because it was such a culture change for you and such a different lifestyle, different way of spending your days. Did you do it?
I suppose the corporate finance exam was quite a panic because I've never been great at maths. So that was the real test for me. And that came 2 months in. So I was very concerned about that. But having done that, and I'm very driven. So once I've decided to do something, I don't give up. So, which is a good and a bad thing. So I was determined to see it through, and I worked harder than anybody else, which was evident really because I came top in my year, which I was amazed about. But I think it was because I worked harder than anybody else. I was so worried about failing, and I did everything that I was told. And so I think I was always determined that I was going to see it through.
A lot of people worry that particularly if what you said about confidence going after being in one in one professional environment for such a long time, people worry that, well, will I be able to, are my skills transferable, basically? You know, if I start something else basically from scratch, will anything that I've learned up until this point be valuable to me? And it sounds like for you, it very much was. So some of the technical knowledge that you developed as a lawyer was less important on that program, but the kind of character skills that you developed, you could just employ in a new way.
Yes. I mean, I think, you know, skills are very transferable. So now that I've set up my own food business, you know, I don't have relationships with clients, but I've got relationships with buyers. And so you can transfer skills from one thing to another, even if it's completely different.
I think that's very reassuring for people, that you're not just closing off a door. I mean, by the time you're in your 40s or 50s, you know, you've learned so much through life that the idea that you won't be able to use any of that is, I mean, of course you will. It just might not feel like you might not know how you're going to use it, but of course you will.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, so skills are easily transferable, which you wouldn't think. And it's the soft skills, I think, that really matter, rather than just technical skills. Because technical skills you can always buy, but soft skills are the skills that you learn when you're working and life generally. And it's about getting on with people, you know.
What a great tip, actually, that, you know, when you stand there at this crossroads wondering what's next, the temptation is to look at the technical skills that you have and say, okay, how could I use these to maybe become a consultant or to start my own business doing what I did before, but doing it for myself. And that often is the avenue that you look at. Whereas I think from what you're saying, you could look at it a completely different way and say, forget about the technical skills that I have. What are the personal skills, the soft skills, if you like, that I've developed? And I could take those anywhere. Where do I want to take them? And in your case, you, as we've already said, you started the business course not without a business idea, but you came up with one there that now you've turned into a business that had nothing to do with your legal expertise.
No, I mean, it was quite funny because when I started the course, you know, they asked us on the first day, you know, who wants to set up their own business, and I was one of the only people that didn't put up their hand, because I thought, how could I possibly do that? You know, but by the end of the course, I gained sufficient confidence to find out who I was and my passions that I did. So so I think if you're passionate about something, then I think you should follow that.
So let's talk about that. So again, it was you were looking for a business idea, and I think when we've talked about this before, you said that you were looking for, where is there a problem that nobody has yet quite resolved, and there was one very close to home, wasn't there, for you?
Yes. So my son became vegan, and I didn't know what vegan was. I had no idea that you couldn't eat honey.
I've recently found that out. I had no idea about that either. Amazing.
No, I had no idea that you could. I had no idea that dried eggs were in places that you wouldn't think that dried eggs were. I went out searching for vegan food for him, and so much of the vegan food was processed. And was not healthy at all. And actually, Henry became quite ill becoming vegan, which seems strange because you think, oh, vegan, plant-based food, really healthy. But it is surprising about how many people put on weight and become unhealthy, because there's a lot of vegan processed food. You know, you can live off chicken nuggets and pizzas and chocolate and pasta, because actually following a vegan diet healthily requires quite a bit of hard work with cutting and chopping vegetables, and also really thinking about what's in food and what combinations work. And also, because Henry was vegan and I wanted to check whether food was vegan, it was the first time I read what was actually in food. I was one of those typical consumers that rush around supermarkets, that think if something looks healthy, it must be healthy. And then I looked at things that I thought were supposedly healthy, and I turned them over and found out they were loaded with sugars and fats and things that I didn't know what they were. And I thought there's a real gap here for food that's vegan and healthy, and also food that actually purports to be healthy and that is honest and transparent.
Yeah. I love that it was something so personal to you, and that it was a real issue that you had, and I totally resonate with that. I mean, we are mainly vegetarian, not vegan, but we're mainly vegetarian, my daughter and I, and it can be very easy to slip into a habit of eating a lot of pasta and pesto, and the problem with that is that there's no goodness in that at all. I mean, it has basically no nutritional value.
Mm.
So I can completely understand that, and I think a lot of people can. So you had this idea, but it wasn't. You wouldn't have done it on your own, would you? It was you went into business with your sister-in-law.
Yeah, I mean, I think that even though I built up the self-confidence and I'd got over the real fear of starting something, I don't think I could have ever done it completely by myself. I think for several reasons. First of all, I like to talk things through with people. I'm used to working with people, and so I didn't want to be completely solitary. But also, I recognized my own skill set, and I'm kind of not very practical. And so I needed somebody that was more practical than me, more creative, and also someone that was a fantastic cook. And Juliet fitted all those boxes. So yeah, so I phoned her up. She's a trained psychotherapist, and she'd been doing that for some time. And to my surprise, she said yes. So yeah, so that was really exciting. I thought I would have to persuade her, but I didn't. She just jumped at it. So that was fantastic.
The universe works in mysterious ways, doesn't it? Just as you were ready, she was ready too.
Yes, exactly. So I think she'd been going through the same thing. So Juliet's fantastic. She brought up 4 kids by herself, really. And she was also going through this same thought process, because her kids were growing up and she just wanted to be doing something else herself.
What does it feel like now to be doing for work something that truly feels like it's yours and truly feels like it's a reflection of who you are and what matters to you?
Oh, I mean, it's just life-changing. I mean, is the only way that I can really describe it. So to be actually able to do something that you love, to create something from scratch, to build something up. I'm not saying that it's all easy, because it isn't. It's really hard work, and there's ups and there's downs, but you're not doing anything because somebody's forcing you. You've got freedom. You have to work really hard, but you can choose to a certain extent when that comes. So I've got time for walking the dog, running and spinning and yoga, and and I can do that, and I don't have to stand on a crowded Northern Line train when it's 30 degrees going to a job where I don't feel satisfied. I don't feel that people respect me sufficiently. And so, to have created something myself is, just feels fantastic. And I feel so much younger than I did when I was working, which seems strange, but I do. I feel much younger, and I feel life's fun, and I'm looking forward. I don't look backwards, and I don't tick, and the days fly by, which I think is always a really good sign.
That's very interesting to hear, particularly the piece about feeling younger, because I think you can get to a certain point in your life where you think, is this it? And the closer you get to maybe your 60s, the easier it is to think, well, it's just another 10 years, 15 years, and then I'll be retired and I can reap the rewards. But I love this idea that actually you said, no, I'm not going to do that. And of course, life conspired also to make that not an option anyway. But that you thought to yourself, no, that I am going to, maybe there's another 10, maybe another 15 years of working, and I really want them to not say to myself, is this all there is then?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, I think age is just a number. And, if you eat well, you look after yourself, you're doing what you enjoy, then, you don't have to feel held back because you're 55 or, 65 or whatever. So I think it's really a state of mind.
Yeah, very clearly. And I mean, I think, we're not looking at you right now, we're listening to you, but I think that people can hear in your voice this kind of youth and energy that you have. I don't think anyone would listen to you and think, oh yes, it's definitely a woman in her 50s speaking. I think it's just in your energy, this kind of youthfulness and vibrancy, which maybe, I mean, I didn't know you 10 years ago, but maybe it wasn't there 10 years ago.
No, I don't think so, because I think if you're doing something that you don't enjoy, I think you feel, quite old and downtrodden. And if you don't have confidence, I think those things can really make you feel old. and particularly if you've been doing the same thing for years and years and years, and you're just on automatic pilot, then I think your brain begins to kind of slow down. And whereas if you're doing something new and different, you're learning, you're putting yourself in outside your comfort zone, experiencing completely different things every day, then your brain is, becomes sharper, and you're training it just like any other muscle. And so I think so just opening yourself up to new things, new opportunities. Go outside your comfort zone, and you will just feel completely different.
I mean, I know that the business is all about food and about health and good ingredients and all of that. I'm assuming that you've also taken that on board in the way that you eat and the way that you as a family eat.
Yeah, so I mean, we've changed how we eat, and so yes, because I've really found, I mean, I'm not an expert by any means, but I have found personally that changing my diet, cutting out dairy, cutting out gluten, cutting out meat, has made a huge difference. For instance, my husband used to have terrible skin, really bad eczema. He cut out dairy, all completely cleared up. So I think these things do have a huge impact. I'm not saying that I'm perfect and I eat perfectly all the time, but I do know that we're like cars, and what we put in makes a huge difference to what we can give out. So I do try to eat well. I mean, I have our soup, our fresh, pure soup every day for lunch, and that sustains me. And I have our snacks every day for the afternoon. And I know that if I live off my soup and snacks, I'm, healthy. I'm getting all the nutrients, and I don't put on weight, and I feel healthy. I feel good. I mean, I don't eat perfectly, as I said, all the time, but I think life isn't perfect, and everybody just does their best. And what we're trying to do is, we're not trying to say, everybody has to eat perfectly and we're all going to be perfect Instagram people. But what we're saying is that we're trying to make things simple for you. So you can pick up a soup, you can pick up a snack, and you know that it's going to be healthy, nutritious. And even if that's just the one thing that you do, you know that you've made a contribution for your own health. And we just want to make it simple for people, because actually, to eat healthily is really hard work. So, to make a fantastic soup, and chop up 7 different kinds of vegetables and cook the lentils and soak the nuts, and it takes time, and, not all of us have that. So we just want to make things easier for people.
I mean, we've barely talked about Pep Lekker. I mean, we talked about how you got there, but we haven't really talked about how the business is doing. And I know that, you guys are getting some great traction with the business, and it's becoming more and more possible for people to access your products. What's next for the business? What's next for the brand?
So we launched this week the seed snacks, which we're thrilled about, because they've already been shortlisted for best organic product, best healthy savoury snack. So we're very excited about that, because they're 5 seeds bound together with apple, and there's no sugar or oil. But they give that snap. So we're very excited about these seed snacks, and we've now given them to several shops and are just waiting to hear back. So fingers crossed. So I suppose that's the most exciting thing, because up until now we've all been soup. So we've just been a pure soup company. So launching into snacks, that's, a whole different area for us.
And just while we're on the vegan thing, because it seems like such a growing trend, so many people that I know are either entirely vegan, or they have vegan days, or they're just trying to have a more plant-based approach to their food. What do you think is driving that?
I think it's a combination of factors. So you've got people that obviously care about animals and the planet. And I think, evidence is such that a vegan diet, clearly it's not sustainable for us all to carry on eating the way we have been. And then, so that's one part of it. And also you've got all the celebrities all becoming vegan and promoting veganism. So that persuades quite a few people that it's the really cool, trendy thing. And then on the other side of that, you've got the health reasons. So as I said, I gave up dairy and meat for health reasons, and you do feel better for it. I think you've got two sides of it, and I think they're very, very different.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I certainly it's the combination, isn't it, of the environmental impact of meat farming, the health, and the kind of, as a result of people like you having brands like Pep and Lekker, the accessibility now of those products. It just means it's not as hard as it used to be. Even just the number of vegan restaurants around the place is just making it
Sure.
a little bit more accessible for people.
No, definitely. I mean, since I first started, we've only been trading 18 months, and there's new vegan brands every week, and there's new products in store every week. And in fact, it's a real challenge now, because there's so many brands now bringing out fantastic, healthy, plant-based food. Which is becoming, I mean, you must find it fantastic now being vegetarian, because there's so many choices.
Absolutely. I mean, I became a vegetarian. When I say we're mainly vegetarian, we eat a bit of fish. We don't eat any other meat. But when I became a vegetarian, I was 14 years old. So that was, in the mid-80s. And I was okay, because my mum is a good cook, and we lived on a small holding. We had access to a lot of vegetables, healthy things to eat. But if I ever went anywhere for a meal, to a restaurant or to a friend's house, or there was a big family meal that was being cooked by some other part of the family, I would end up with a very dry, oven-baked sort of veggie burger thing that made out of that kind of TVP mince or something it was called. It was so awful. And this is what I'm getting. Everyone else is getting this gorgeous meat.
Absolutely. And I remember going to this function last week, and I ordered vegetarian, and everybody else ordered meat. The chicken was like partly cooked, and everybody was kind of saying, "Ugh, this is horrible," and everyone was saying, "Oh, you're vegetarian, looks delicious." And I thought, "Oh my God, how things have changed."
Yeah.
That all these meat eaters were wishing they'd ordered vegetarian. I mean, that's the real turnaround. That actually, that caterers are focusing as much on the vegetarian dish as they are on all the other dishes, which is fantastic.
Yeah. And like you say, in the next 5 years, the vegan thing, I think, is just really going to be so commonplace that you're not going to be, it's just not going to be so hard. Of course, it's going to make it more challenging for you in your business, because the market is more crowded.
Absolutely. But I think to be honest, Blair, I think everything's hard these days, and I think if somebody thinks they've got a silver bullet, then I wish them good luck. But I think everything now is very competitive and hard. So I don't think there's any. I don't think there's many easy routes now to be successful.
It's hard to find a market where you're the only one in that market for any length of time. And I think that in a way, what that forces is, rather than seeing others coming onto the market as competition, what you see it as is, well, it's driving a trend which then grows the market.
Exactly.
And as long as you stay true to your values, and you put the customer at the heart, of what you're doing, and in your case, the quality of the food, then, you can only benefit from more and more people being in that market.
Exactly, because the fact that supermarkets now have aisles, with gluten-free and vegan and vegetarian, means there's more chances to get into that supermarket. So, And and also, I think what's really challenging is if you're trying to do something new and different, and you're the only person doing it, you need resources behind you. So it's much better that it's ground well trodden,
Yes.
and there's other people doing it, because being the only person, obviously can offer a fantastic opportunity, but at the same time, in order to persuade people that this is what they want when you're the only person doing it is very challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's say someone's listening to this and they've thought to themselves, okay, firstly, the fact that I'm approaching 50 or in my 50s is no reason not to go for a big life change. They're thinking that, and they're also thinking, why don't we have a vegan meal this week? where might they start with that? What's something that you can put together relatively easily to dip your toe in the vegan pond?
Lentil burgers are always a very simple option, because lentils are fantastic. They're high in fiber and protein and all sorts of goodness. So lentils are really easy, and also cooking them is very easy. And there are a gazillion recipes that you'll find for lentil burgers. But basically, all that you need to do is you need to get some olive oil, garlic and onions, and you cook your lentils and you bind them all together. And you can add matzo meal, because that's what I do, because I'm Jewish and have grown up with matzo meal. But otherwise you can always try breadcrumbs. And, you can also add other little things. You can add peppers. Lentil burgers are a really good staple. Very quick to make, very easy. And as I say, there's a gazillion recipes you can find.
That's great. Susan, thank you so much. I think that you've inspired a lot of people in a lot of different ways to follow more of who they are and what they want, no matter what stage they're in their life. It's never too late. It's never too soon. It's been fantastic talking to you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very, very much. And if I've inspired just one person to follow their dream and passion, then that will be fantastic. So thank you very, very much.
I'm really fascinated by this growth in veganism. I never thought it would happen. I mean, I know a lot of people become vegetarians. I'm mainly one myself. I never say I'm a vegetarian. I always say I'm mainly vegetarian. But I'm really fascinated by the growth in veganism and what's driving that. And quite interesting. Ivy and I often eat in vegan restaurants when we're traveling. The food is always exceptional. So it's great to talk to someone who's been part of that growth and is going to be part of that growth in future. And I also really enjoyed bringing this story to you. The growth and the number of people starting their own business is phenomenal, particularly people making that decision in middle age. So if there's anything holding you back from considering that for yourself, I hope you were inspired by Susan. You can find out more about Pep and Lekker at pepandlekker.com. All the information is in our show notes, so check that out. And please do stay in touch with us. You can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Brilliant Gamble, and check out our website, www.abrilliantgamble.com. And with information about all of that, here is the lovely Ivy Palmer.
To hear from you, you can get all the episodes of this show plus read the blog and find out more about our travel adventure at www.brilliantgamble.com. Sign up to the newsletter and get an advance notice of the classes and programs Mummy is running. Plus, you can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Brilliant Gamble. Finally, please leave a review and star rating for this podcast on iTunes, as it helps people find us and take a brilliant gamble of their own.